I'd want to give you hope. AI is a huge change. It's definitely a pivot point. It's definitely scary, but that's okay. I heard somebody suggest that perhaps the best development engineer will be a quality engineer doing prompt engineering, right? And I think that's very powerful. Internet, are you on? How's it going, everybody? Sean J. Burke here, the mighty beard of quality, starting up the first episode for the Quality Engineering Podcast. Here today with me, special guest, friend of mine in the quality space, Katie Brewster. Katie, thanks for being here with us today.
It is a pleasure to be here.
So looking in the background, where are we? We're at the StarWest convention, a convention on quality and testing. We actually just got done giving our session on how to build a test team that's customer-centric. So we're pretty jazzed. We kind of crushed it. We crushed it, right?
We definitely crushed it.
All right, so we're pretty jazzed, and we decided what a day to start the Quality Engineering Podcast. So what are we talking about here out of the StarWest conference? Well, all things quality and testing. I've seen things from automation. I have seen things about how to do performance reporting. But I'm not going to lie, folks. Where is my focus? AI, right? What does it mean to test in a world of artificial intelligence? So do you share kind of my general interest in this subject?
Absolutely. And I think the community as a whole shares the interest because everywhere you look at StarWest has been AI, everything. Those two letters are everywhere.
So I found something interesting, right? I've been to a lot of conferences. Sometimes they can be a little hit or miss. I actually went for the additional training that they had here at this conference on Monday and Tuesday. Fantastic sessions, right? I met a new person I'll be following in the quality space, Jason Arbon, really a forefront in the thought process of how to use AI. Fantastic sessions, right? Like I went to the session, I immediately learned things like eval. That's my new test suite. What have I done with that? Well, nothing yet. But when I get back home, it's going to be one of the first things. Went to another great session by Tariq King. Tariq has an entirely different presentation style, but at the same time, a huge focus on AI and really prompt engineering, right? Whole new term for you to learn. And honestly, a giant pivot in how we do software building, and that will obviously impact quality. So it's an exciting time, right? Sometimes exciting can be scary. I think people are wondering, is AI going to replace me? I don't think it is, and we'll get into a little bit of that. But let's start by just talking about, where do you even begin when testing AI? And I'm curious, Katie, what have you picked up about testing AI here at the conference?
It is mixed as to whether some speakers say that it's going to replace testers and some speakers say it's not going to replace testers. And so it's kind of a mixed bag. I think we're still at the early stages where we definitely need to get ahead of it. Jason Arbon focused on that in a keynote session. And if testers get ahead of adoption with AI, it can definitely pivot what we do every day and make our jobs better and faster and more efficient.
And while it's always scary to wonder, if your job's going to be replaced, I definitely agree with the thought process. It isn't about your job just being replaced. It's really about taking on new roles and responsibilities in the quality space. So if you're new to this, might seem incredibly intimidating. Having been doing this for a few years and or decades, what I will tell you is really just another pivot in how we do it. This has happened to me throughout my career. First we were object-oriented programmers, and then APIs came into fashion. First they were SOAP APIs, then they were REST APIs, and between those statements, 1,000 other technologies changed as well. So if you're in this space of engineering, you do have to just learn to kind of pivot every few years, 6 years. And this is probably one of the biggest pivots I've ever seen, but it's super exciting. Katie, what have you taken away as prompt engineering from the conference? What does it mean to you?
Prompt engineering to me is getting AI to give me the value that or the details that I'm looking for out of it. So you can't just ask it, write me a test case, because the test case is going to be okay-ish. It's not great. It's not going to outline all the things that we do as testers naturally. And so I learned how much goes into prompt engineering to drill down and get into the specific actual details of a test case. So I think I learned how much work that's going to be, changing into a prompt engineer.
Something interesting hit me while you were answering, which is I kind of dove in with my excitement about AI here without really defining some of the basics of what AI is, right? And since, again, when you say AI, I think end of the world Terminator, I really need to back up, right? In fact, artificial intelligence is really more of a marketing term. What we're mostly talking about in generative AI is what's called an LLM, a large language model. The goal of the large language model is to go out, crawl the web or whatever source of information that you give it, and basically read all of it. And then in real time, be able to connect those facts together to give back an answer. But it's still only as smart as what it's been trained on. And it's still a little like a human in that sometimes it'll give you a precise answer. Sometimes it'll give you a little more creative answer. And actually kind of turns out you can tell it a little bit about whether you want or one or the other or some variation in between. So what we're really talking about here with AI is the large language model. It is definitely going to be a transition point. I know that, when I first heard artificial intelligence, a kid growing up in the 90s, Terminator, Star Trek, I really expected something that I simply asked a question of and it responded with the right answer. That has not been my experience with using artificial intelligence. And it doesn't matter whether it's ChatGPT, if I'm using Gemini through Google, if I'm using Claude, or any number of other models that are out there in the space. What I have found, and really it connected with me when somebody reminded me that this is all based on neural networks, is the artificial intelligence really does kind of behave like a human, right? It sometimes does things you don't expect. We've trained it that it should give us an answer, otherwise it's a bad robot. So it will generally try to give you an answer. And what I found through things like this is that if you're at a prompt and you're asking the AI for a question, you could actually change its answer once it gave it to you by simply saying, what's your confidence in that answer? And the AI will go back and rethink it. I might say in my prompt when I asked it for something, it's okay if you don't know the answer. And that'll actually change what comes back to me. So incredibly powerful, yet at the same time, certain glitches that I just really didn't expect were going to be there. I was talking about the fact that in one of the sessions with Tariq, we were working in Gemini. I was asking Gemini how to create some fake data for me, right? And it actually started spitting it out. I could see the JSON, and then all of a sudden it literally disappeared off the screen and told me it couldn't give me that kind of response. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, I just saw it on the screen. You started giving it to me. So because I learned it here that Claude might be better with code, I went over and switched over to Claude. I started asking it a few questions and it zipped out some basic test data in a JSON format. Okay, good stuff, right? We all do that all the time. Having a computer do it quickly is good, but it had an email address on it. The email address was @gmail.com. And I asked the AI, like, have you considered that could be a real email address? And it went, oh yeah, good point. And it came back and gave me an address with @example.com. Now, if you don't know, @example.com can't be owned by anybody. So it's the perfect substitute when creating an email or a URL in your testing environment. Because, even if some emails went out unexpectedly, they disappear into the ether because no one can own @example.com. The fact that the AI didn't really understand that already was generally surprising to me. And it's where I realized in this prompt engineering that quality engineers probably still have a lot of value and maybe even a little bit more than the developer, because you can get the AI to spit things out to you like code, but you still have to have some understanding of that data and whether it's going to compromise security or anything else along that line. So, that was just surprising to me. I really expected AI would be faster and better at those sorts of things. But, hey, that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm learning about prompt engineering.
And I think that goes into a lot of, you have to feed the AI, the prompt. You have to feed it what you want it to do. So you have to tell it, use @example.com domains for all of your test records. And so you are basically building the framework inside of AI to get the results that you want. And you kind of have to think about it all up front or slowly drill into getting those answers crafted in the way that is actually usable for you as a tester.
So I'm sure you're noticing the shirts, and it turns out Katie and I don't dress alike just for the fun of it. We're out here representing the company that we work for, Phoenix Team. Now, Phoenix team also has their own generative AI offering that's going on. And the only problem for Katie and I is they turned and looked at us and said, hey, how do we test this? And of course, we went, but turns out I found that answer out here. And it has to do with something called an eval, right? Now, I got to thank at Jason Arbon, that's where I'm getting this information from. That's what made the session so incredibly valuable for me. But when I came into the session, I was thinking to myself, how do you test an AI when you can't get the same result out every single time? Because that's what I'm used to. Create a test suite, put it in some sort of runner, execute that runner, look for green on the tree. Where you see red, go fix it. And that's no longer the paradigm inside of artificial intelligence. What is the paradigm? Apparently, to just ask it a whole bunch of questions and monitor the trend of how it responds, right? It's almost, I don't know, offensive to me to some degree. It seems like it should be more involved than that. And it seems like it should be more involved because sometimes, at least in our mortgage space, if someone comes and tells me, hey, I have 1,000 tests, the first thing I ask him is like, well, have you thought about creating 100 good ones? Right? I'm not really impressed by volume most of the time because it tends to lead to sloppiness. What really seems like that is exactly opposite of what I'm going to need to be doing with the artificial intelligence. So again, I'm going to have to use that quality-minded thought process that I have and learn to ask the AI a question, right? Now, I don't think you had the chance to see any of these JSON files for the eval suites, did you?
Did not. No.
Okay, so these things are hundreds, if not thousands of lines of these evaluation statements that they do it, right? So the first thing I'm like is, am I going to have to sit here and type all this out, right? I wonder if there's a way to come up with a system that could help me with permutations of the original question. Yeah, that's right. If you're not picking it up, I'm probably going to use the AI to help me create the permutations I need in the eval suite to test the AI. The machines are alive, people. And really, maybe that's where we're going in the long run, is that one AI is going to test the other AI, and that's okay. But as a quality engineer, I think there's a huge opportunity here that somebody still needs to check for that 10%, 5%, 1%, whatever it is, where the AI just goes off the rails, right? And that's what a quality-minded person does. So really, if I wanted to be afraid, if what I did was turn out code and Spring Boot and things of that nature, I'd get worried because the AI can do that by itself quite well. And frankly, it doesn't even want to do it the way you think about it, right? I'm a big proponent of code style and things of that nature, right? So that one coder can know how another coder does that. AI doesn't want that. AI will create one giant file, 10,000 lines long, because as far as it's concerned, that has all the context it needs, right? I can't read that. It's just an interesting paradigm, but I can definitely read the results and see where it's going. So I'm going to ask it a question, right? I'm going to go ask the AI to give me permutations. Then we're going to set it up in this eval suite. And apparently I run it against my AI, right? And it gives me back a bunch of information. And I go for some percentage of how much it got right, right? So maybe I started off and the first time it's 40%, right? Okay. So I go back, we change some of our prompts or whatever it is we need to do. We put in additional guidelines, things of that nature. And we see if we re-release the change or we run the whole suite against it again, if it got better than 40%. But like, what part of it got better than 40%, right? Like, that's still a pretty big black box. And as a quality-minded person, that really kind of makes me nervous. I'm not going to lie, right? Do you share that same feeling with me?
I do, and I get nervous for the manual testers. Is this eval thing something that they're going to be able to learn and adopt and not have to write code to do or whatever, right? Like, is it going to be for manual testers?
That's a really fantastic question. That's a really, and really, prompt engineering seems like we're all headed, right? And while it's scary, change is always scary, right? So I think it's just a matter of adapting to it. And I think the answer actually is yes. I think the manual tester is going to be able to do it. I think that what they're going to learn is how to use that idea that they had, hey, I need to test this, then use the AI to help figure out a bunch of permutations and things like that, and then go ahead and put that into the eval suite. So I think that kind of stuff is exciting, but let's take a look at something else from an AI perspective. Did you have a chance to see anybody who talked about AI with test cases and things of that nature?
I did. I saw Tariq King speak about how to be a prompt engineer to create your test case, and then I also watched. I also went to a presentation about API testing and using AI to generate your API calls.
What I'm trying to say here is that, especially as an automation engineer, as someone who likes, even when I'm manually testing, to be in there punching the keys, I've built a lot of test plans. And it's never my favorite part of the job, right? Figuring out all the words to put in, all that sort of stuff, especially after you spend a long time trying to test it, and then you got to take all the time to put those steps that you already know in for somebody else. And boy, you ever tried to write something that somebody else can understand? I mean, it gets difficult. Turns out the AI is excellent with that sort of thing. You could literally go in and ask the AI to create you a test plan for a particular website, right? Your company website, a public website, whatever it is, and it's actually going to spit out quite a bit of information. And then you can even refactor on that. So let's say it has some functionality tests. So I might ask it, well, tell me more specifically how I'm going to go ahead and do that first test. Now, does that replace you doing the tests? No. Is it going to give you all the answers that you need? No. But it might give you a whole bunch of that text and verbiage that's a little more minutia to create.
Listen, if you're telling me I don't have to do any more documentation, I will throw money at the answer, because I hate documentation. It is it's nobody loves every part of their job, right? I mean, maybe not nobody, but most people don't love every single part of their job. And documentation is the part that I hate the most. As Sean said, you have to write it in a way that other people can read it. Well, I know how to write it that makes sense to me, so I know how to do it again in a month from now when I have to release again. So, over time you learn to craft them better, or document better documents, better steps, better everything. But yeah, if I can get an AI or an LLM to spit out my test cases and the required documents for my, customer, I'm all about it.
And, if you're a leader of quality and engineering, really even in general, and you've given people the directive, we don't use AI here, understand something. They're using AI without telling you, right? So I would really encourage you to challenge thought processes of fear. Hey, we're not going to get into the AI, and turn those into AI curious thoughts and really start seeing what you're developing, what you can develop with it, I should say. Because trust me, your engineers are out there doing it anyways, because hey, if there's a shortcut that can help them get more done at their job in less time, they're going to go off and do it. So are there other types of AI? Yeah, absolutely there are. But this is what everybody's talking about. And at the basis of it, neural networks, I think, is the right term to use here. And sometimes I'm good at talking, so I just started saying that like I really understood what I was talking about, and I don't. But neural networks to me means, and this has been going on for a long time, how is it that we can emulate the human brain, right? And I was really struck as we did some of the prompt engineering how much AI can be like a human. If I don't give it a good example of what it is I want back, then I'm probably not going to get back exactly what I want, right? I think I said earlier, these ideas that I could actually ask the AI what its confidence in itself would actually change the answer. I mean, that's mind-blowing to me. But like many changes inside of engineering, once you get by the mind-blowing part of it, you just start learning more and you just start pivoting to doing it. So most of these large language models, right? Copilot, Gemini, what other big ones are out there? Ooh, GitHub plus Copilot is a big thing I'm seeing here at the show. Any other ones that come to mind for you?
I mean, ChatGPT is the default, I guess. Right?
Good point, right? And, definitely here in the screen, in the comments, I'll make sure to put some lists of where you can go out and find all these various different models. There's actually a website called Hugging Face. I don't know why either, but Hugging Face has a list of all these various different models, and it rates them based on how they pass these eval test suites of various different types. So these are the kind of things that you should go out and do for yourself right now. Just start looking at the information. And I don't mean like put it off till next week or next month or maybe 6 months from now, because this stuff is moving fast. I would literally carve time out of my day in order to start learning this. I would pivot from a Google search or a Bing search or anything traditional like that to using one of these AI offerings and just starting to learn how to work with it, right? Working with these concepts, that asking a question is not always the sole thing to do it. How would you explain the persona in asking an LLM a question?
I think The persona is the key to getting out the results you want from an LLM. It is how the LLM will know what the user needs to do, or how they're going to test or write the test case, or a user story, or whatever. It has to understand a little bit about that person or persona that you're creating. So you have to feed the LLM through some of the prompting to really get a full grasp as to that persona before you then ask it to create a test case or a user story.
Or anything. Let's say I wanted to ask the LLM, what kind of Christmas gift should I buy for Christmas? Almost assuredly, it's going to give you an answer back. If I then tell the LLM, I'm a child of 13 years old who likes playing video games, skateboarding, and surfing, what kind of Christmas gift should I get? Entirely different set of answers. It's literally going to be able to pivot and realize, oh, okay, I'm being more specific here. There are certain things people at 13 years old who play games would want for Christmas, and it'll change that answer. So that persona influenced the answer. Likewise, if I said I was an executive in the financial tech space who has most of the things that I need to meet my needs, what would be a creative gift for Christmas? Gonna get an entirely different set of answers. So that's the persona and some of the things that we've learned out here while attending this session. So is that everything you need to know about AI? It definitely is not, right? This is really the call to action for the quality community that we all need to be working yesterday on what AI means to us. And again, if we can give you some encouragement, look for those things in the job that aren't your favorite part of it. Creating that initial test plan, creating variations of various different tests, and, go from there, right? Challenge yourself to figure out where the AI didn't go, right? So if you wanted to test logging in as a user, like what would your username usually be, Katie?
Test user, or test first name, and I'd create some sort of test password 1234 or something.
And that sounds pretty good. And that's a professional right there. Notice she didn't say email address. Now, when I was asking the AI about testing, most of its usernames came back as email addresses. And I think most people are like, well, why wouldn't it? Isn't that everybody's? No, it turns out if you're a flexible system, while you may allow an email address to be a username, you'll allow something that isn't an email address to be a username. Why? Think about like your grandparents who share an email. So if they want to log into their healthcare site, right, and grandpa wants his login and then grandma wants her login, but they both share that same email address, well, they need to have different usernames that aren't email address based, right? I didn't see the AI taking notice of that. Now, certainly 100%, if I prompted it with some understanding of that concept, it's going to do it hands down. But that's kind of my point. As the quality engineer, there are still many things that the AI, when it's whipping out its fast answer, when it's looking across the grand internet where almost everything that's a username is an email address, it may not immediately recognize this, right? So AI is a super exciting time. And, everybody has the question, am I going to be replaced? I think we've touched on that we think it's no. But we were actually giving a session, I referenced it earlier, on building a test team that was customer-centric. And again, I think that's where you have the value as a quality engineer that everybody else doesn't have, is thinking about that customer, right? Because the AI might go out and spit out that code for the low level things that you need to do for connecting the database, but it's not going to think about all the various different business conditions that go on there. So it's an exciting time. One of the other things that I want to touch is that AI doesn't replace a lot of the things that we do. In the talk, Katie was talking about Gemba walks, right? Getting out there with your customer and seeing how they do things. The AI can't do that, right? So those are things where, as a quality engineer, will still be very important. And it was kind of funny because I created this AI image of Katie leading the Gemba walk. And one of the things she says is, well, I really shouldn't lead the Gemba walk. And I was like, oops, bad robot. But tell us a little bit more about that concept of the Gemba walk, those things we can do as quality. Like, why is it you're not leading them? What is it you should be doing?
You should be watching your users. You should be letting them lead you as to how they're interacting with the system. Your user could be a customer success person. It could be someone in their home ordering food on your app. It could be, your executive vice president creating his own airplane ticket, right? So, I mean, it could just be anyone and everywhere. And it's easier to meet with someone in your company to do a Gemba walk, but you have to branch out and meet people outside as well and get their feedback. If you're ordering food on an app, you need to really see how those people are interacting, because I can promise you users are not doing what you want them to do. They're doing it totally different. So when you tell someone, this is how I want you to do this in the system, or this fancy feature we just built for you, they're not going to do it the way you just told them. It's just not going to happen. You could spend days creating beautiful training documents, having these wonderful training meetings, and they're going to go back to their desk or their home or whatever, and they're going to do it how they want to do it. And they're going to click all the buttons that you didn't want them to click and didn't tell them to click, and it's going to crash or burn or all of the things, right? And so to prevent that, understanding how your users are interacting with what you've built lets you know that when you're adding features to your existing system, you can, as a tester or a QA person, look for, wait a minute, they're not using that feature this way. I know that you think they are, but I watched them 2 weeks ago and they're not using that. So it can prevent a lot of dev work that, and testing that will make it to production that won't be used eventually. And it can actually create a better product that your users will enjoy interacting with, because you understand what their current use cases are.
As we were talking about those Gemba walks, we touched base a little bit on user experience with, if you haven't had a chance to work with user experience folks, it's something we've been kind of lucky to have some really great ones. And it turns out they're probably right there with you doing that Gemba walk. They're probably going to have a slightly different focus. They'll be looking at how the user kind of interacts even with their entire space. Are they organized? Are they disorganized? So they'll even take it to another level, but they're going to end up producing personas out of this sort of thing. And I really think that the persona is a great way to understand your user quickly, right? And as a quality person, you can now tell the AI about that persona. And it'll be interesting to see how the AI might change its answer based on the things you told it about that persona, right? Then you can continue advocating as a quality person that the team kind of uses this common language of personas. Because you ever thought about the fact that we say, as a user, I want, then, well, that user is really a persona. You could say, as a lender, and go on and do that same thing, right? And then when I go over and I write a Gherkin BDD style test case, given a user logs into the system, no, given a lender logs into the system. And what happens as quality people doing the things that the AI doesn't even realize needs to be done is we're creating a common language amongst our team. And when you create common language, it makes things better. That's why we have domain specific languages inside of engineering, right? This concept was known long before the AI was here. So I think if you're a business-centric person, if you're working with understanding the user, Gemba walks, other things like that, if you're partnering with your user experience folks who are doing personas, and what you're championing is making sure that that is used consistently throughout the SDLC, well, you're kicking ass and taking names, all right? That's all I'm going to say about it, right? And the AI can't do that, right? So as we conclude the inaugural edition here of the Quality Engineering Podcast, and appreciate everybody who tuned in to listen or watch, I'd want to give you hope. AI is a huge change. It's definitely a pivot point. It's definitely scary, but that's okay. There are lots of ways that we can respond to this using our quality mindedness that are going to give us positions, right? I heard somebody suggest that perhaps the best development engineer will be a quality engineer doing prompt engineering, right? And I think that's very powerful. So quality folks, don't lose focus. Just make sure you get out there, start checking out the AI, begin that conversation with your dev and project management teams, and try to get in front of them and how they use it. One thing I heard Jason say at the keynote was, if we don't do this fast enough, they're going to start using artificial intelligence to do testing without us. And well, I think we know how well that's going to go.
Yes.
So keep the faith. There's a lot of excitement that's going on with artificial intelligence. There's a lot of things that are exciting about generative AI, but it doesn't replace you as a person. What you do matters. Make sure that it's business centric, and tune in for episode 2. Katie, thanks for coming out here with me today and kicking this off. It's a real pleasure always to work with you. And I look forward to a little bit more learning out here at the conference.
Me too. Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks so much, StarWest, TechWell. You put on a great conference. I could totally turn in my expense report saying it was worth it. Everybody, make it a great day.
Noise.